In the last 3 parts of Maximize Your Soul's Growth, you learned about reincarnation and that we live many different lives. You learned a lot about the soul's decisions and that we are here to become more and more loving and the very best people we can be. You learned about signs and symbolism. You had a thorough explanation of all of that, how the animals communicate with us, how we get information through technology, as spirits connect to us through technology. You learned about the significance of music, feathers, numbers. You also learned in those prior seminars about how our thoughts affect our physical body and how our thoughts can make our body sick if they're not loving and warm and from the heart. Today, you're going to learn all about the soul's evolution. This is my least known material. I saved it for the end so that I could ease you into it for those of you that have been to my other seminars. But this is information that I've known for 30 years. I started studying the work of Brian Weiss, Ian Stevenson, Michael Newton, back when I was 19. And I have known this information and it has helped guided me through my life the whole way through. But I was in the corporate world, in managerial positions. This was not information you shared with people. And even up until the last 5 years, I know that I couldn't have shared all that information that I had got 30 years ago. I know that with all of these planetary shifts and all the things happening with our solar eclipses and all the Mercury being in retrograde, this is what makes us become more and more aware, more and more conscious. Those of you that chose to be here in this time in your soul cycle knew that this was where you were going to learn the most, and this is where your soul would transform and evolve the most because of all these planetary shifts going on right now. And that's why we can fill a room with people that are interested in this topic now. But 30 years ago, I don't know how many would have shown up. When we are in heaven, what we do is we meet with all of our guides and we say, all right, how am I going to live this next life? That's how it begins. We create what's called a life chart. And we chart out the major things that we want to have happen in this life. What our major lessons are going to be, what our major challenges are going to be. And we also figure out who our parents are going to be and who our enemies are going to be. And also where we're going to start out living. Maybe a couple other places we might sort out too. All of this is decided upon, and we have a soul group that we are with every lifetime. You recognize them because when you meet them, you feel connected to them. And that's how I was with my parents, who are not my parents, but I met them. And I felt so connected to them, and they felt the same with me. So that is how I knew they were part of my soul group. And I go to many lives with them and learn from them, and they learn from me, and we go through in different roles. Sometimes I might have been their parents in another life. In this life, I'm more like their daughter. So we pick our people that we come back to each lifetime with and play different roles to learn from one another. It's quite remarkable. Now you would say, Meredith, how are you believing this? How do you know this? I know this because of studying the work of the men that I mentioned. World-renowned Brian Weiss, who is in this spiritual world. So some of you may not have heard of him, but he was on Oprah and very educated and doing past life regression with people that he records. And then he goes back and checks the information that they've supplied him with to see if their memories match up with what was going on at that time in history. And even Ian Stevenson does the same thing, Michael Newton does the same thing. So you can look up their books, or you can find them in the bibliography of my purple book, and you can learn too and read the different regressions that people have gone through and what their memories are. Now, say I'm wrong on all this. Say none of these authors are really telling the truth. What I want to say to you about that is that this is a positive way of living your life. If you believe that you come here many times and that every challenge is for us to learn from, we are no longer victims, right? Right. That's important information. So I could be totally off the mark, but if you just think that you come here, you live this life, you die, and that's the end of you, is that uplifting? Does that encourage you to be better people? Does it encourage you to operate from your heart? Doesn't do any of that, right? So you might as well start thinking this way, because remember, our thoughts become our reality. So when we put together our life chart, we also come up with sacred contracts. That's what they are called, sacred contracts that we decide upon. And I'm going to tell you in a little bit about one of the sacred contracts I made when I came to this lifetime. But we can change contracts as needed when we do past life regression. So I'll fill you in on how we can do that, because I want to help you really realize how much responsibility you have in all this process. So even though there are life charts that lay out your major things that you're going to be doing in this life and your major lessons, we still have free will. Do you remember, for those of you that were in the first session, I told you that my personal proof of reincarnation was when my daughter was talking to her daughter from another life? And I wasn't sure what to do with that information, but do you remember I told you I went to someone and I had a reading, and I asked him, should I do something about the spirits in my house? My daughter's always talking to spirits. He helped me because he sat there and he said, no, your daughter's just talking to her daughter. It's fine, you don't need to bring in someone to get rid of the spirits. And that was my personal proof of reincarnation. So he's actually here today, which I'm honored. But he was also talking to me this week at lunch about free will and how not everything is charted out for us. That we come here and we want to have free will and we want to have new experiences and try things and maybe mess up in some areas just because it's fun. But he was telling me that he knew that he was going to be in a car accident. He literally saw it. He knew it was on Davis Drive in Newmarket, but he didn't trust that his psychic abilities were right. So he said, I'm going to go along Davis anyways. I'm just going to see if anything happens. So he went along Davis. Sure enough, he was going through an intersection and a car almost hit him. But he has a Lexus, which has the ability to make the car brake when something is coming close, and it braked for him and saved his life. But he said that was his proof of the fact that we do have free will. He didn't have to get into that car accident. He avoided it. Isn't that interesting? Yeah. So thank you for being here, Rob. I'm honored. We choose all of our challenges in our lives. We may not choose how the challenges occur, but we choose the major challenges. So you know how we all have challenges at some time in our life with money or with health or relationships, but there'll be one area that we focus on. So my biggest challenge in life has been my relationships. Someone else might be money. So we choose those things. And if you can look at it and say, I'm not a victim, I chose those things so that I can learn what I need to do and so that my soul will grow to full capacity in this lifetime. So we also are here to learn the virtues that they talk about in schools. You know how they talk about patience and humility, and they pick one each month that they focus on. Well, those are some of the lessons we come here to learn. So some things may be happening to us over and over again until we learn humility, or we learn patience, or compassion. But always we are learning to be better people. And the better people that we are, the happier we are in our lives. It's not just for appearance sake, it's the happier we become in our lives. Some of us have had extremely challenging lives, and some of us are born with handicaps or with disease. When a soul chooses to do that, It is because that is what is going to help their soul grow the most. Those people with the most challenging lives, with handicaps, have actually chosen the most difficult life. But if that's happened in this life, along with all the planetary shifts, we know that they're likely going to achieve what they want to achieve for their soul. Now, some of you might look around and say, well, I know some people that have really easy lives. I would really like to have that life. Well, guess what? That is a life in between lives. We can't always have easy lives. So they likely had a very difficult life in their last life, or their next life is going to be very difficult, and they're just having an easier time this lifetime. But always there will be challenges. Sometimes they won't tell you, so keep that in mind. I want to read a section from my book about these choices of different things in our lives and what we can learn from them. The more experiences our soul has, the more diverse and successful our coping strategies will be. The more inner strength and wisdom we will gain, and the more our spiritual qualities will grow. If we never experience stress or pain, we couldn't reach the elevated states of consciousness that we do. If our hearts never broke, we could never be compassionate or empathize with the pain that others experience. Someone that cannot conceive a child in this lifetime might have wanted to explore other means of learning in this life. We know we learn huge amounts from raising children, but maybe they wanted to learn in a different way this lifetime. Someone may have been a caregiver in another life and wanted to experience being cared for in this life. I actually know of a woman that when she was vaccinated as a baby, she became developmentally delayed. She's now in her 50s, and she's been waited on her whole life. And you can tell she loves it. She can get things on her own, but she wants you to get them for her. And that's this life for her, right? I want to be cared for because last life, I was looking after too many people. Someone who cannot conceive in this life might have a past life block, propelling them not to have children in this life. So an example might be that they lost children in another lifetime and would be too worried about their kids' safety in this lifetime. So maybe, they lost track of their child when they were out, and the child ended up being kidnapped, and they thought, this lifetime, I'm not putting myself through that again. There are all different reasons why we make these decisions. But when the past life block is removed, the individual can relax about conceiving, and that acceptance allows them to conceive. So it's not that everything can be changed doing past life work, but some things can. If we are poor in one life and rich in another, a minority in one life and part of the majority in another, or the tormentor in one life and the sufferer in another, how can we fail to learn compassion over many lifetimes? Reincarnation is a foolproof way for us to learn love and for our souls to evolve. When we're in heaven after completing a lifetime and we connect with those we knew in our last incarnation, there is no judgment, only love. We discover why the other person was so cruel to us. So we're up there and we're saying, oh my gosh, my enemies come to greet me at heaven. Why would they do that? And they're all full of smiles, and they say, well, I had to teach you such and such, and I love you that much on this side that I would be willing to be your enemy on earth. Those that misunderstood us or became angry due to our actions will come to see that we meant well. Those individuals that we loved but never had a relationship with, or maybe never were romantically involved with, we might get to be with them again in another life and have that romantic involvement. Or if a relationship ended poorly, we can make amends for that up there, but they won't care anyways because they knew what was supposed to happen with the two of you. The baby that we miscarried has a soul that we will meet again one day, who will tell us why the circumstances were not right for them to be born when they were due. Often, the miscarried babies their soul comes back at other times. So my youngest child was due in January, and I miscarried. She was actually my first child, I believe. So she was my first child. She was due in January, and I thought, oh, that's the worst time of year. That's RSP time. And my husband at the time was a financial advisor, and I thought, oh, he won't be around to help me. I miscarried. Then I gave birth to my other daughter. And then the next time I was pregnant, I was due in January again, because this soul really wanted to be born a Capricorn. And you'll read in my book what each of the astrological signs' meanings are. We choose astrological signs as we go through life to help us develop certain traits in ourselves. And each of the signs are listed in here with what exactly we're trying to learn when we are that particular sign. So Aquarians, which is what I am, we have a global purpose. We want to help a lot of people, but we have to stay grounded to do it. That's our big challenge as being Aquarians. So are you seeing the beauty in all of this? It's a remarkable way in which to see ourselves. And in fact, you remember in part 1 of this series, I was telling you that this information was all in the Bible, but that it was taken out by a Roman Catholic priest who said, come to the church, we'll teach you about all this. They didn't want it in the Bible. And there are original versions of the gospel that Sylvia Browne has read and others have read that do say that the Bible did explain reincarnation so that we as humans would know what this was all about, but it was taken out. When we make all these decisions and create our life chart up in heaven, we then come into our mother's body around the 3rd trimester. We can come in sooner if we want, but the majority of souls come in the 3rd trimester. I mean, there have been people that I've taught in other seminars that have said, I don't understand why I chose my father. He sexually abused me, he beat me. I just cannot understand that. And my only explanation to them is, all I know is you chose this. Let's pretend that you're in heaven right now and looking at your father and saying, what have I learned from this man? And so one of the women I was helping with that, she is very, very good to animals because her father was abusive to the animals that they had in their home. So she spends her lifetime caring for animals. So that was one thing she figured out, but there were others. So we always have to look at whatever our biggest challenge is and say, what has it taught me? And if you need to meet with someone to discuss it or go over it, do that, because once you find that answer, if it's the right answer, you will relax about that from now on. If you find the truth, your body will know it's the truth, and you will not be concerned about those challenges anymore. When we die, we don't actually die, as you know, but when we die, I mentioned last time that we have the option of choosing different exit points. So each of us has about 7 or 8 exit points in our lives that we can take. So remember when that Mack truck almost hit you? That was an exit point that you could have taken if you were done here. But remember, we talked about free will and that you can choose which exit point you're going to leave on. So when someone has a disease, you think, oh, that's so horrible that they're dying from that disease. But if they choose that to be their exit point, their soul is ready. Their soul contract is up and they're ready to go. It makes death a little bit easier to comprehend. And that's also why it's nice that funerals are referred to now often as celebrations of life. In India, everybody knows that you live another life. And it's a beautiful ceremony where the body's sent into the water and there's flowers everywhere. And it is not a sad affair because the soul now has freedom to be wherever. And Earth is our hardest place to live. All the times that we're here feeling lonely, feeling frustrated, feeling we're not accomplishing things, that's because this is not our home. Our home is elsewhere. Why do we always need, you can be 90 years old and still need compliments. Why? You've lived your whole life You've done all these great things, and yet you still need compliments. Why? Because this is not our home. Because we don't know our greatness here. Our goal is to find our greatness here. You remember in prior sessions we talked about how to come to love yourself, how to come to forgive yourself, and that is key in coming to believe in yourself and know your own greatness. I want to talk about how past lives impact our current lives. So what happens is, I'll give you an example of a client of mine that had a phobia of illness. So she showed up and said, I am always worried about illness. Whenever anybody I know gets sick, I'm always the one looking it up online. I won't eat or sleep for days. I'll just be researching their illness. I'm obsessed with it. I'm worried. It consumes me, and I need help because I don't know why I'm doing this and I need to stop it. So I decided to do the journey work with her, which is created by Brandon Bays. And it's supposed to take you back to a childhood memory. But when you go back to that memory, it can help you resolve whatever it is that you're afraid of. But this particular woman used the journey work to go back to a prior life. That was not my intent. When we learn the journey, we don't go back to prior lives. That's not part of the training. But she went back to a prior life when it was wartime. And she remembered everything, the uniform of the nurses, the uniform of the doctor, how the people looked. She was a child in this lifetime, and she was diagnosed with an illness that was life-threatening. But the way in which she was told about it was so fear-inducing. So she ended up being so scared of this illness. As a young child, her mother and the doctor were talking to her about it, just made it sound, it was horrible. They didn't make her feel comfortable. She died. She didn't go to heaven right away. I will talk to you more about that as to the soul's choice with that. But she spent many years in a black void before she went to heaven. So here she is, next lifetime, looking back, saying, oh my gosh, I am so scared of illness. No matter who is sick, I'm worried about it. So that ended up what healed her, is she learned this is the reason behind her phobia. She became conscious of it, and then the next time she heard about people being sick, she said, oh yeah, that's what happened to me in another life too, but I don't need to concern myself with it in this life. Another example of how our past lives can help our current lives is when I go and see different practitioners sometimes just to experience them, to see if I can recommend clients to them. Because that's why I call myself the resourceful mother. I don't believe I know I don't have all the answers. So I went to this woman, and I didn't know she did past life regression. And I just thought that I would have her do a reading with me where she talks to my spirits and my guides to learn more about myself and my life. So that's what I was going for. About half an hour into her describing what my spirit guides had to say about me and my life, it was time for questions. And I said, I want to know why I've spent so much time alone in my life, because you know from prior seminars about that I don't have this family here, which is why I've chosen my family. So I wanted to know why I'd spent so much time alone. And even my girls, they are with their dad as well as me. So they're not dependent on me, right? They are for a little period of time, but not overall. So I just asked her this, and she asked the spirit guides around me, what is the reason that this would have happened to her? And they said, well, she needs to do a past life regression with you in order to get the answer to that. And she said to me, but we'll do that at another time because that will take longer. And I said, no, I'm really quick. I said, we have to do it in this session. And so she asked the guides, can she do it quickly? And they said yes. And so she said, okay. So she starts preparing the bed for me to lay down to do the past life regression. And I got the message in my head that I had killed a lot of people. And I thought, no, that couldn't be. Oh, that's crazy. suddenly I felt this big pain in the left side, in my left side, and I started to like buckle over, and I started to get very emotional. But I didn't tell her. I just let that go. I thought, oh boy, what happened in this life? And that's what's great about past life regression, where you're going back to the past life yourself. It's not someone telling you about a past life, because when you go yourself, you feel it, and then you know it's real. So she just put me into a deeply relaxed state very quickly, and I remembered that I was an Indigenous man. I had been I could see myself in my 30s, shoulder length hair, muscular, and I was describing myself to her. And she said, now walk into your village and tell me how people are seeing you. And I walked into my village, and people were looking at me with respect. And I was surprised, because I knew I had messed up in this lifetime. I could feel it, right? So I was surprised. She said, what is your role in this village? And I said, well, I'm a healer and I'm a leader. And she said, oh, that's interesting. That's kind of what you do in this life. And I was like, right, because when you're back in that life, you're not thinking about your current life. She fast forwards in that life a bit, and she says, what's happening now? And I said, oh, I'm negotiating with white man. I actually called them white man in my past life regression. I'm negotiating with white man, and I'm trying to teach them how to live better lives. But what's happening is they're insulted that I'm trying to help them with this. They did not ask me to do this. I've taken it too far. And I said, there's going to be repercussions. Then she said, okay, fast forward 3 weeks from now, what's happening? And I said, my whole village is on fire. It's 10,000 people. It's all my fault. And she said, all right, what are you doing right now? And I said, well, there's a little girl that has been burnt, and I'm putting a poultice on her. Like, I actually use the word poultice, which I don't use in this current life. So I'm putting a poultice on her, and I'm trying to help her heal. And she said, what's happening now? And I said, white man's arriving. They're all on horses. They're going to take me away. And she said, okay, so how do you feel about them taking you away? And I said, I deserve this. I've killed my whole village, indirectly, and I deserve to be taken away. So I go on this horse, and I go to the settlement where the white man lived, and they hang me. They start to hang me. And she says, how are you feeling right now? And I said, I'm ready. I can't stay here anymore without my village. So I was hung. And in this life, I've had troubles with my neck, and had to have different massages and stuff over the years, because that is where my stress will go, is in my neck. But after this past life regression, my neck has not been a problem. I just needed to learn that I was hung in that life and what the reasons were. She said to me, still in my deeply relaxed state, let's talk about the contract that you created for this lifetime. What were 2 elements of that contract that you stated that you wanted? And I said, well, I didn't want anybody to be dependent on me. And I said, I didn't want to ever control anybody, because I knew that that would create problems for me, right? So she says, do you want to renegotiate the contract? And I'm thinking, you can do that? Yeah. So I said, sure. And she said, what do you want? And I said, well, I still don't want to control anybody. Everybody has to do things of their own free will. And even those of you that have had life coaching with me, you know I never tell you what to do. It's always helping you find the answers for yourself. So I wanted to keep that one. And I didn't want people dependent on me per se, but I wanted a tribe. I wanted a tribe again. So I asked for that tribe, and I got that tribe. And you are part of that tribe. I've done seminars for 30 years, and I haven't had this many people coming out over and over again to learn. So that was a really neat way of looking at a past life and healing aspects of the current life. So I want to tell you one more story about a past life that helped someone in their current life. So the father of my children always had a knot in his back. And whenever he would go for a massage, they would always say, there's a knot here, we're going to work it out. And they'd be like working, never get it out. And he was around 40, and we were splitting up, and we decided to go for past life regression. Okay, I decided to go for past life because I wanted to know how we had known each other in prior lives and why we had had to go through so many difficulties in this lifetime. Well, it turns out that in one of the lifetimes I had with him, he had his back turned to me, and I stabbed him in the back. I actually created that scar tissue that came into this life. Now, those of us that have birthmarks in this life, it has significance to what happened to you in another life. So if you have a birthmark on, like my eldest has a birthmark on her stomach, and she came into this lifetime with big stomach and digestive challenges, which we overcame. But the birthmark will be there so that we can possibly address the unresolved issue from the prior life in this life. So once my ex-husband realized that it was me that stabbed him, then he was able to understand what this was about and why it happened, why I was angry at him, and that gave us some insight into this life. So shortly after that appointment, he went to a restaurant, and he used to sit in the restaurant with his back to the wall. And I would always have to face the wall, so I never got the good view. But he would put his back to the wall because that allowed him to see who was coming, so nobody could stab him in the back. But he wasn't aware of that, right? So after the past life regression, he found himself sitting in a restaurant with his back out in the open, and a waitress came up behind him and said, "Can I help you? Can I take your order?" And he was so taken aback because he's used to seeing people approach. But what he realized is, wow, I didn't need to sit with my back to the wall. And so she took his order. The other thing is that when he went for his regular massage with his regular massage therapist, the massage therapist said, "There's no knot in your back anymore." Yeah, so that got healed. You know, it's amazing how the healing can take place just by being aware of it, not even necessarily doing all this work around it, just becoming aware of it. So I want to just explain a little bit about how I've helped clients through understanding or discussing their past lives. So there's a client that was supposed to be somewhere in the audience here today who came to me very distraught about the fact that she had lived in England, she had met her husband in Canada, and had decided to come get married to him here and leave her parents and her family in England. Shortly after, I guess it was within 1 or 2 years of her coming to live in Canada, her parents both died, one after the other. And by the time she came to me, she had lived with years of guilt that she had left them and caused them so much pain that, you know, maybe she could have helped them and maybe could have prevented their death or at least prolonged their deaths. So she was very racked with guilt about this. But the intuition I got on this matter was that her parents had a soul contract with her. And they said, once you're married and we know you're happy and settled, that's when we exit. Our work here is done. So when I said it to her, I got chills going down my body. She got chills going down her body. So we knew it was the truth, right? We have different ways in which our higher selves, I'll talk more about our higher selves, but we have different ways in which our higher selves let us know that it's the truth. So that allowed her to have peace with that issue, and she's young. She doesn't want to live with guilt the rest of her life about her parents' death. When someone is having challenges with people in their lives or circumstances in their lives, I will have them in a session go up to heaven and say, now, why would you have chosen this person? Why would you have chosen this circumstance? And just them having that different perspective can help them understand what lesson they might have come here to learn from that person or that circumstance. So you can get a vision of how this is all going together. But I want to talk now about what happens when we're actually here in this life. Are we really alone? And the answer is no. We are never alone. So I'm going to talk to you now about angels, imaginary friends, spirit guides, and tell you how each of these people play a role and how we can communicate with them. So the most well-known angel sighting was in World War I, when the soldiers were literally on the battlefield and an angel came above really large in the sky. Everybody saw it, and she was there to comfort the sick and the dying. And they called her the Angel of Mons because it was Mons, France. There have been obviously many stories throughout the years of angel sightings. We each have a guardian angel that is with us our whole lives. And you don't need to know that angel's name. You can refer to, say, guardian angel, what should I do about such and such? So the guardian angels are the beings with the highest vibration. So they are the ones that it's easiest for us to connect to. So we can literally look at that angel and in our mind's eye and say, guardian angel, what decision should I make here for my highest good? And they will answer us. Angels can come in human form to save our lives. And some of you have heard stories like that and experienced things like that. So they can come in human form and help us. But they have actually never lived in human form before. They've not lived a lifetime in human form, which is also why they're of such high vibration. They don't spend time here. Angels can show up in any clothing. They can be a homeless person on the side of the road. They can be a movie star. They will present themselves in different ways depending on what our needs are. We can ask angels for help, or they will come and give us help with knowing we need it. So there are archangels, and I'll just mention two of them. Archangel Michael is the angel of protection. So if you just need to be protected, you ask Archangel Michael to protect you. If you need healing, you ask Archangel Raphael to heal you. Or you can even refer to the unnamed angels. So you can say, unnamed angels, please help me find this parking spot in front of Nature's Emporium today. So you can refer to them in any way you want. You see, it was never designed to be difficult. And yet when we go to different spiritual teachers, sometimes we are given the impression that everything's so difficult, but it's really quite easy. So you just say, angels help me, guardian angel, please help me. Our imaginary friends. So some of you know of children that have imaginary friends, and some of you have believed that that these are real beings, and some of you have not. But these imaginary friends come in at the very beginning of someone's lifetime, usually, and some of us remember our imaginary friends, some of us never do. But they come in to be with us as we go through our early years here on Earth. So I remember when I was out in BC visiting my parents, and my eldest was in the back seat of the car, and we were going on a day trip, and I went to do up her seatbelt, and she told me to do up another seatbelt for her imaginary friend. And I said, okay, and I just went along with it. I didn't know anything about imaginary friends at that time, but just did up the belt. Some time after that, she decided she was going to go to camp for 2 weeks at the age of 6, which is pretty young to do that. But she wanted to go to this particular camp, and the minimum was 2 weeks. She didn't do well at that camp. She was very unhappy. She didn't make friends right away. And what she told me afterwards, and we were writing letters too, because you couldn't call the kids, but what she told me afterwards was that her imaginary friends were with her at that camp and kept her company, and that's what helped her get through the whole experience. After that camp, I didn't hear about the imaginary friends again, but around age 6 or 7, as we get further away from our lives up there and less in touch with things that went on there and more rooted in the reality of Earth. Spirit guides. So we each have at least one spirit guide that comes with us to guide us to be our best selves. Oh, so spirit guides have lived in human form for at least one lifetime. So they have experienced being here. So I remember back, well, when I was 19, I went to the Omega Center in Yorkville. That's where the spiritual center, where you would go to learn about these things. Did any of you go there? Yeah, good. So I went there, and they had a teacher that taught us how to get in touch with our spirit guides and taught us about spirit guides. They put us into a meditation and we closed our eyes, and the name that came into your head first is usually the name of at least one of your spirit guides. So the name that came to me was Richard. I didn't know anything more about Richard. I just got Richard, wrote it down. Years later, came across that journal, and I'd already been, since then, meditating and talking to Richard. So then I looked back and I was like, wow, so I was given the right name back when I was 19 about my spirit guide. In a meditation with him, I asked him, how did I know you? Or what made you come to me? And he said, well, he used to be a nutritionist, but he wasn't called that. He was just a natural doctor back at the time of scurvy. And he knew that scurvy was caused from a vitamin C deficiency. And he would tell people this, but nobody believed him. And he said, I'm helping you in this lifetime get information out there to people about nutrition that they can't easily find. So he said, by me helping you do this, that's fulfilling me, because I never got to teach people this information. So I found that really fascinating. And I know he's my main spirit guide. But in another meditation, a mother of mine from another life named Emma, from when I lived in Ireland, it was either Ireland or Scotland, I've forgotten, and we get mixed up talking about that too. But she and I were really attached as mother and daughter in another lifetime, and she guides me in this lifetime as well. The more time you spend meditating, which you start with just 5 minutes, breathing deeply, you don't have to be in any particular position, but the more you do that, the more you will get into this still space where you will get this information downloaded to you. It doesn't happen right away. When we hear our inner voice speaking to us or warning us of something, that is usually our spirit guide helping us. Yeah, that's where that comes from. So another thing that can happen is that when we're really close to someone on earth and they die, they can become one of our spirit guides. So my father-in-law, Harry, he came to me in a meditation and said, I'm now one of your spirit guides. And sometimes when you hear this information, you don't know if you've heard it right, but there have been many instances in my life where he's come to me and I think he is guiding me. But his reason, he told me, for doing that is that in this life he didn't support me very much. I would talk to him about life after death and things like that, and of course not a lot of people are open to that. And there were other circumstances with my daughter's health where I was doing things differently and he didn't support me in that. So he said, I felt badly that I never supported you very much when I was with you, so I'm helping you now from up here. And so that was a great feeling of comfort. And when you hear an insight such as, I wasn't there for you enough when I was on earth, for me, I didn't know he felt that way. So for me, that insight made me know that this was beyond me, that it wasn't my thoughts that I was receiving. So we can ask our spirit guides to help us live better lives. We can ask them to help us make the right decisions. We can ask them to help us choose the right people in our lives. So some of you might be saying, well, if we've got all this guidance from angels and guides, why are we messing up all the time? And there's two reasons for that. One, we ignore them. We ignore what they're telling us. You've all done that. Two, we don't hear them. Sometimes we just don't hear them. And so the more spiritually connected we become, the more we hear the voices and get the warnings. You can just imagine how some of them are suffering, watching us suffering, because we're not listening to them. But they know that that is our journey on earth. And they know that sometimes we have to endure pain in order to learn our lessons. And that's exactly why we suffer as humans, is so that we learn those lessons. So our higher selves, this is our God-like self. Now, this is a part of ourselves that is located in the subconscious mind, and it is always guiding us to take the higher road. But we have to be able to listen to it, right? And They are guiding us to get closer to the divine, just like our angels and our spirit guides are guiding us to get closer to our higher selves. So everybody's got a role in helping us be the best people we can be. The more we can be in touch with our higher selves, the more we can accomplish our heart's desire. And that's one of the topics we're going to discuss today, is how do we manifest what we want on this earth now that we're here. Those people that are racked with anxiety and fear are not spiritually connected. They don't have faith. And I will sometimes be with a client where they have so much anxiety and so much fear, and I say, so do you believe in a higher power? And they say no, and sometimes they just start crying because they know that's the answer, but they just can't get there, right? And life circumstances have led them to not believe in a higher power. But if they can start to believe in a higher power, even just for their own peace of mind, then they will notice that their anxiety will slip away, because it's like when you say a prayer and you ask God to take care of your problems, you suddenly can go to sleep afterwards because you're like, oh, he's got it. The best way for us to be in touch with our higher selves is through meditation. And we can literally say say I'm doing this meditation to be in contact with my higher self, so I get a deeper wisdom. So that works. But the other thing you can do is you can just literally be in life, say, higher self, show me the way. Yeah, higher self, how do I deal with this person? How do I deal with this situation? And you will get the highest, best answer for yourself. And the more you do it, the more you get in tune with it, and the more you know you're doing the right thing. How do you know that the messages you receive, whether it be from angels, higher self, spirit guides, how do you know that the messages are real? The way you know is if you have feelings of love or wisdom when you receive the message. If you feel fear, that's not the real message that you are to get. If you receive insightful or inspirational information, that is usually the truth. That is the spirits talking to you. Lastly, if they're giving you information that's on a high level, then that would be most likely them. So they're not going to tell you to go walk your dog. That is not high-level information. You're going to be given things that are beyond you. So I remember I was at a meditation, a group meditation, and my brother-in-law and I didn't get along too well. And it had been many years that we hadn't been getting along well. And just prior to that meditation circle, he had told me that he said, you know, I really do actually like you, but I can't like you. You're my brother's wife. So he said, you know, I just give you a hard time. And I was like, what? After all these years, that's the problem, is you like me? And I never would have guessed that in a million years. But we had not, even from him telling me that, we had not started to form a new bond yet. I just knew the information, left it. So I'm in this meditation, and he was having troubles with his wife, and she was going to kick him out. And he was asking different people if he could live with them. Even his mother wouldn't take him in because he's quite a difficult personality. So he had nowhere to go. And so in the meditation, I asked if I should do something to help him. And what I got was, ask him into your home. And I was like, what? I mean, that's how come I knew that this information was beyond me, because I never would have asked him to come into my home. And I said, I was just closing my eyes, and I said, what's the reason? And they said, show them the way. Because you have to be loving, regardless of how someone is. You can't judge someone's behavior and deem it wrong. You have to always be loving and know that if their behavior is inappropriate in your eyes, that person is likely in pain and suffering. They don't mean to be acting inappropriately. So I thought, oh gosh, I have to bring him into my home. Even my husband at the time didn't want his brother living with us. But the information was so strong that when I came home, I called my brother-in-law and I said, you can come live with us, before I even got my husband's permission. Yeah. And then he lived with us for the better part of a year. And he was not there very often. In the beginning, we talked a lot and, you know, I helped him with different aspects of his life, but he was really not a trouble. But I knew that I had done what they had told me to do. I remember being in nutrition school. I was actually teaching at nutrition school, and one of the students told me that she had been directed to go to nutrition school, but she said, I'm not interested in nutrition at all. But I was told I had to come here. And I was thinking, oh, what a horrible thing to have happen to you. But remember, I told you the story of how I wrote the last book, that the spiders were all around me telling me to be creative. And I wasn't ready to write that book, but they started biting me until I actually wrote the book. So we are guided to do things. Sometimes we don't want to do it, but there's always a part of us that wants it, thankfully. And we have to follow more and more of what we're told to live the best lives we can live and to help the most amount of people. So let's talk about spirits. So the spirits are the people that we knew on earth that are now living up in heaven. So the spirits help us too. So those of you that have lost your parents, let's use them as an example, might come through to you through technology. We talked about that before, that they might come through in your grandfather clock and make it do weird things, or they might turn off lights on you or make things not work. They might come to you by sending you coins or songs that you shared with them when they were here. They might talk to you through those you know. So you're talking to someone and suddenly they have a message for you from your parent. So that might happen. They might talk to you through animal presence, like cardinals are very well known for being the soul of someone that we've lost, and they're just coming to say hi and say, I'm with you. Yeah. So there are all different ways that spirits can help us too. But you can even ask a spirit, you know, so say I was telling you about my father-in-law guiding me. I can say, Harry, help me with this. So you have a range of people that you can be asking to help you with different tasks. So when spirits hear us talking to each other, they might decide to tell us we're wrong in something we thought. Or they might decide to tell us that we're right in something we thought. So my best friend in high school, Debbie, she lost her mother to cancer at a young age. And she said to me, Meredith, you know how we live other lives. How do I know that when I die, my mom's going to be in heaven to greet me? And I said, oh, she'll be there. And she goes, you know that for certain? And I'm like, yep, she'll be there. I don't know how that works, but I said, she'll be there. So that night I had a dream, and her mom came to me, because I was close to her too. And her mom came to me and said, you were right. I will be there to meet my daughter in heaven. And we sat down in a cafeteria that was at my office, but it's in my dream. And she's explaining all sorts of things about the souls. I didn't catch all that, I must say. I don't remember it. But she was explaining all of that and saying, you were right to tell my daughter I'll meet her in heaven. All I do remember is her saying, the soul can be in different places at once. And you might recall that I mentioned to you that when we sleep, our souls go and do other work and visit other people. And that's one of the important reasons for sleep, not just for our body regeneration. So our souls can be in different places at once. And so at the end of the dream, my friend's mother told me to make sure I told Debbie that she had come to me to confirm the information. Well, the next day I got busy and I didn't contact Debbie. And the next day I didn't contact her, but her mom kept coming to me, tell her I came to you and confirmed it. So finally on the third day I called Debbie and I said, I just want you to know that what I told you about your mom meeting you in heaven, it is actually true. Your mom came to me in a dream and that actually happened. So it's neat how spirits will listen to us and either confirm or deny things we've said. They will also choose to come to us at the same time they come to other family members. So say you've lost your mother. She might come to your brother, your sister, and yourself all in one night. So that the next morning when you're wondering, were they with me last night? were they giving me a message? You will mention it maybe to a sibling and they'll say, oh yeah, I was with them last night, they told me such and such. And I like how the spirits do that because they help you believe that you're not going crazy and that you did hear them. So that's a really neat thing. Also, spirits are always around us that we were close to on earth at the time of the anniversary of at your birthday and at the anniversary of their death. So if you're feeling their presence, you may not even be consciously aware that the anniversary of their death is coming up, but they'll be around you. And then suddenly you'll realize it was the anniversary of their death, and you'll say, oh, of course they were with me. It's the anniversary of their death. So those are times that they always choose to be around us. So every year on my brother's birthday, I contact his spirit and I say, come and talk to me on your birthday. And that's how I spend his birthday. Not the whole day, just a little bit of time. It is us that prevent the spirits from coming to us. So it's never the spirit that says, oh, I'm not going to go visit this person I was close to. So we prevent their arrival. A client of mine who gave me permission to use her name, I wrote about her in my book, her name's Dawn. She shows up at my house and she says, I need you to connect me to my mother's spirit. Now, this is not my role, okay? I am very spiritual, I think very spiritually, but I do not connect people to spirits. I'm not a medium. When someone says they need help, I just ask God to give me the information I need to help them. So different things happen even if I'm not putting it out to the universe that that's what I offer. So she says, I know you know how to do this. And it's funny because when someone says that, that's an NLP technique, neuro-linguistic programming, where you say, I know you know how to do this. And then the soul just kicks in, the subconscious kicks in and says, yep, I know how to do this. But your head's saying, I have no idea how to do this. So she's sitting on my couch and I give her different essential oils to help her reach a deeper recess in her mind. That's why I use them. So I say, it's you that's preventing your mom from coming to see you. So let's use this essential oil to help you reach a deeper place within yourself and find out what the reason is that you're preventing her from coming. And I said, oh, the other people that you've lost in your life, do you communicate with them? And she said, yes, I know that I'm communicating with other spirits. So that's why I know I can communicate with my mom. So what comes out when she's got the essential oil in use is that she feels guilty for how she handled her mom's death. So what happened was her mom said, I don't want to see my son. If your brother shows up in this hospital room, Dawn, I don't want you letting him come in. I don't want to have anything to do with him. But when Dawn's brother came in, she allowed him to go see her mother. And she's always felt guilty about that because her mother specifically said she didn't want to see her son. I said, first of all, that was a very loving thing you did. You did allow your mother to see her son even though she said she didn't want to. You were opening your heart. Your mother wasn't. But I said, what happened when he actually went into the hospital room? And she said, well, my mom turned her head to the wall and wouldn't look at him. Yeah, that's pretty severe. She died a couple days later, so she was very close to the end. But I said, well, look at that. Even though you let your brother in, your mother still got her wish. She didn't have to look at him. She didn't have to deal with him. So that alleviated her guilt about her mother. It's all, you never know what's going to happen in these sessions. So suddenly her body was filled with chills and her mother was coming to her. And I said, right now? Like even I was surprised, right? But she'd let go of her own guilt in that one thought. You see how powerful our thoughts are? And that allowed her mother to come. And then she went into my bathroom and she was blowing her nose and crying because she was so happy that she could feel her mom's presence. And she looked at me and she said, you've got to help more people with this. But of course, how do you advertise that? So I haven't helped anybody else with that, but it was a really neat lesson for me in how we prevent the spirits coming to us. So mediums. Mediums, I briefly mentioned, they are the individuals that connect us with those on the other side. So some of them are really talented, some are not so talented. When my brother died, I wanted to communicate with him. And you're supposed to wait a good number of months before you go see a medium, because you have to wait for that soul to get settled up there in heaven and for them to get clearer in being able to communicate with you. But I couldn't wait, and I'd heard about this medium. So what you can do beforehand is you tell the person you've lost to meet you at this appointment, to be there. So I kept telling him for days before, Jay, be at this appointment, talk through this woman to me. And when you do that, that's where they will come through. So I go into this appointment with the medium, and she says, I just want you to know, Meredith, that as I do this reading, I'm going to get some names given to me, but they don't come through clearly, so I don't repeat those. I don't do names. I said, no problem. So we're talking about my brother's death and the circumstances around his death, which was in Thailand. And she didn't mention Thailand, but she did seem to know the circumstances of his death. And she knew it was drug related. And so at one point, it was time to ask questions. And I said, so does my brother want people to know that he died from an accidental drug overdose? And she asked him, and he said, I don't care what you do with that. You can tell people or not, but there's two people in particular that need to know, Jordan and Mark. And she says, yeah, I just told you names. And she said, they came through so loud and clear that I didn't mistake them. And she said, it's Jordan and Mark. Jordan was our half brother, and Mark was my brother's best friend. So then I knew I really had my brother. And this was all recorded. It's all on a tape. After that appointment with her, where I knew I'd really been in touch with my brother, I told a few people about this medium, and I said, oh, you got to go to her. They didn't have good results with her. And they said, yeah, she's not a good medium. And I said, oh, I forgot to tell you, you've got to ask your spirit to be there and to make sure that she hears them. I didn't know that was necessary until after the fact. So that was unfortunate. But I certainly got the proof that we can get these spirits coming to mediums and giving us messages and helping us come to peace with the circumstances of their death, with their loss, with whatever we're looking for in terms of that. By the way, the CIA and the Soviet government use mediums to solve cases. The CIA, yeah, some of you know that. We all are either raised or exposed to religious beliefs that teach us all about hell, and that we're going to go to hell if we don't do things right. Through all of my research, over and over it is confirmed that we put ourselves in hell. And it's not with a devil with a pitchfork. We put ourselves in hell by our thoughts and the way we think about things. So say someone dies, they have a choice whether to go to the light or not. And if they go to the light, that in heaven, they meet with a council of elders. First of all, other loved ones come to greet them, including their pets, because sometimes people wonder about that. Then they meet with a council of elders, and they go through their lifetime. It's almost like seeing video of your lifetime. And you say, oh, yeah, made a mistake there. Oh, yeah, I should have done that differently. But it's our own judgment of how we did things. The council of elders are spirits that have had many lives as humans. They no longer need to come here anymore. They have lots of wisdom, but they are not judgmental. They will help us see what we've done wrong, but they will not castrate us or punish us. And they will go through, oh yeah, you could have done that differently. Oh, you could have done that differently. And then next lifetime, your goal is to do more right. So I had a situation where I had been friends with a guy in our group of friends named Brad. Brad was a cop. His friends referred to him as AH, which stood for ass something. And you know, he was like not a very happy person. When his wife left him, he shortly after that committed suicide. And the way he did it was he hung himself, but he strangled himself. And so he had, being a cop, he knew how to tie this rope. I think it's 12 different ways. Some of you might know this. It's 12 different ways so that it was foolproof and it was going to work. And that's how he killed himself. So I went to his funeral. It was actually the worst funeral I've ever been to because everybody was in such shock that this young guy had committed suicide. And it was a secret that at that time that he had committed suicide, but then it became known. Anyways, months later, I'm in my bed and his spirit comes to me. And he starts putting his hands around my neck. I can't see spirits, remember, but I could feel that someone was putting their arms around my neck and squeezing. And it got tighter and tighter until I was like, are you gonna let go here? But he made it so it was just tight enough so I could see. He said, this is the pain that I'm still living in now. So when we don't go to heaven, we still feel the pain that we were in when we died on earth. So I said, you're not in heaven. And he said, no, I won't go there because my mom's there and I don't want, his mom was really bossy and always telling him what to do. And I was friends with her too. And he said, I don't want her to beat me up for committing suicide. I don't want to see her face of disappointment when she looks at me, so I'm not going to heaven. So I said, okay, what are you here for? And he told me that there were a lot of things he was supposed to do in this life, but he was actually having worries about it. So his sister needed a kidney. She'd been on dialysis for years and she needed a kidney and he was supposed to donate the kidney. And I knew this about him ahead of time, but this is the part I didn't know. And that's how come I knew I had him and it wasn't my own thoughts. He said, my body's always worked really well for me. It's the one thing that's never let me down. My thoughts have let me down, my emotions have let me down, but my body's always been good. My fear was that if I gave my kidney to her, that I would lose the workings of my body. And he said, but then when my wife left me, I couldn't go on with that either. So he just was, not wanting to live without the kidney, but not wanting to live without his wife, so he took his own life. But he said, I'm coming here today because I want you to show my wife how much I loved her and still do. So then he filled me with love. I literally could feel all the love that he had for his wife, ex-wife. So I said, and you sure you don't want my help going to heaven? Like, not that I knew how to help him at that time, but I said, you sure you don't want me to find out? And he said, no. I said, okay. So he left. The next day I contacted his wife and I told her how much he loved her. And she said, oh, thank you for that. That's very meaningful. She said, but I thought he was in heaven. And I said, well, I just think that if he's showing me that he's in that much pain, that he's likely not in heaven. And I asked her permission to help him go to heaven, which I don't need to do. But I didn't think of it that way at the time. I just remember going, can I have your permission to get help for him? And she said, absolutely. So it was the very next day, I was just on a walk with a friend that I was walking with regularly, and she was very spiritual. And I said to her, I just started to tell the story of Brad and what was going on. I didn't think she could actually help him. I thought that she could give me the name of someone that could help him go to heaven. And she said, I just had told her one sentence about Brad. Suddenly she says to me, did he throw up a lot before he died? And I said, no, I don't think so. And then she asked some more questions and I just kept saying, I don't know. And then he told her to stop asking me questions. And then I realized, oh, throwing up, sore throat. He's showing her the sore throat just the way he did to me, to say I'm still in pain from hanging myself. And so I explained that to her, said, he didn't throw up, he hung himself. And she goes, okay. And then she says to Brad, very authoritatively, okay, Brad, stop, I get it. Why won't you go to heaven? And he explained to her about judging, and she sees spirits, whereas I don't, right? So she could see him clearly. And he's saying, yeah, I don't want to be judged by my mom. And she said, but you see the light over your left shoulder. She even knew where the light was in relation to him. You see the light over your left shoulder? And he says, yeah. And she says, well, that's where you've got to go. And when you go there, there is no judgment. All you get is love. That's it. Everybody, every single person you can think of that you were close to is going to be there. And that is where you will finally get rid of this pain in your neck. And so she said, I'm going to direct you to the light. Start heading there now. And we'd stopped in our walk, of course, and I could feel him going to the light. And I actually at one point, and when my friend that was doing this, she had closed her eyes and tears were coming down her face. And as he was going towards the light, I could see his smile. I couldn't see his face, but I could just see his huge smile, because he had a great smile, but because he was such an angry guy through life, we barely ever saw his smile. So I always remember when we were younger, seeing his smile and thinking, that is a beautiful smile. You noticed it because you saw it so infrequently. So I saw his smile as he was going to the light. I could feel the magic. And then when he was there, my friend opened up her eyes and said, "Did you see that?" And I said, "No, but I felt it." And then his mother came over my right shoulder. Remember, it was just a knowing. I couldn't see her, and she thanked me. And I just started to cry. And then after that walk, I was in my Jeep going along Wellington, and there's not a lot of wildlife around Wellington, just like I told you about the raccoons on Yonge Street. So when you're driving along, when I was driving along Wellington, I saw a whole bunch of birds fly up into the air. And right behind them, trailing behind, was one bird catching up to them. So I knew that was him and his spirit catching up to the rest. And that was my proof, because remember, I believe in the animal symbolism so strongly, and they use that to connect with all of us, but they particularly use that with people that believe in animal symbolism. So that's when I saw that bird catching up to the others, and I knew he had caught up to the others and he really was in heaven. That day I subconsciously, I realized, put on purple, because it's the most spiritual connected color. And I was like, wow, I really must be onto something now if I could be part of that, right? But it was that our group of friends back in my 20s, I was the only spiritual one. So he knew if he's going to get help from someone on earth with what he needed, he'd have to come to someone that was spiritual, and he didn't know that many spiritual people. And I wasn't even that far along because I had to ask someone else to help. Let's talk about ghosts. So you could say that Brad was a ghost because he didn't go to the light and he was visiting me, and other people could see him. The ghosts are only the souls that don't go to the light. So when you see a ghost, you hear of a ghost, they're actually, everybody is good at their core, every single person. So when you see a ghost, you can say, go to the light, it's safe there. That's all you need to do. You may need to say it a few times, but that's how you get rid of ghosts. But those ghosts are always, they have guides. Even when they're in that void up there, they have guides trying to convince them to go, but sometimes they need someone on earth to say, yeah, you can go, it's safe to go. But they're not meant to be scary things. They are just lost souls. They can literally spend years, like many human years, not being seen or heard, I should say, and thinking to themselves, why are people not responding to me the way they used to? So they're just lost souls. Now, when you see in the movies the poltergeists, these only come to people that are emotionally disturbed, and they actually need to get help and to get healed emotionally so that they stop attracting the poltergeist. But of course, movie producers love doing movies about these poltergeists because that makes it very exciting for everybody. But they only come to those that need emotional healing. So, are there any questions about the soul journey? Yes?
Yes, I have a question. I'm a mother of teenagers. When you talk about past life, what is the best age that you recommend that a person will sort of see in their past life, the present life, they're having hard situation?
There's no best age. You can go at, my daughter, my eldest, was remembering 5 of her past lives before she was even through high school, all on her own. So you could be, and young children can remember past lives. I remember hearing this, I was doing a seminar on indigo and crystal children, and a mother came in and said that she had injured herself the day before, and her son came up to her at the age of 4. He said, I used to have a medicine bag that could help you right now, but I don't know how to help you this time. So, young children remember past lives or can go for a past life regression.
And do you think that they have the right maturity to understand that?
So that's why you need to go to someone that's recommended, because the people that are trained in this help people deal with their memories of past lives.
What is your sort of qualification for that?
You take a past life regression course, which I'll actually be taking myself in May. I don't have the training to do past life regression, but as I say, people will come to me and things will happen. But I go to Brian Weiss, who's world renowned for doing past life regression.
Can you say his name again?
Brian Weiss, Weiss. Any other questions? Yes.
Dogs, exit points for pets. Will they tell you if a pet is ready, as you say, exit points for humans? What about?
Yes, they also have exit points. And I remember before my dog was actually killed by another dog, but I remember the week before he died, he was down on his paws on my carpet, so sad. And the only time I used to see him like that was when my youngest daughter wasn't home, because he and her were really bonded. And so I remember thinking, why does he look so sad? Paige is here. But then it's because he knew he was taking that exit point. Yes.
Yes.
So if you say that we pick our parents,
Same thing.
If you
You
adopt.
pick the people that raise you.
but if the person who gave birth to you, it was
Yep.
that person
You pick the
picked.
person that gave birth to you, and they're going to learn certain lessons by having to give you up, right? And then you pick the person that's going to raise you and what lessons they're going to go. And if there's other people that are involved too, you've picked them too, because you're going to learn lessons from that person and that person. Yep. And that's why the adopted kids don't need to suffer the way they do all their lives. Seemingly, they all seem to feel unwanted. And they don't need to. They can come and get a help to know that they chose this for themselves, to learn certain lessons, and to be with certain people that they want to be with in this life. Yes.
Yes.
Do pets tend to be with other animals? Like, is it just in the other world, or is it?
Yeah, so I've in all the things I've told you, I've made sure that everything I've told you I've read over and over again. Your question, she asked whether pets reincarnate as other animals only, or if they can eventually reincarnate as humans. I read conflicting information on that. But what I do know is that we as humans cannot go back to being a pet because we're at a higher vibration. So we won't go back, and that resonated with me. But I don't know about all of the animal world. Yeah. Yes.
Meredith,
Yes.
I met a young boy yesterday, 15 years old, who is going through terrible anxiety right now. There's a fear of death. And so I asked him did he believe in a higher power? And he wasn't sure, and he said, no, I think I'm agnostic right now. So I wasn't sure how to connect with him with my belief in God and how I help myself, thinking about my mother who's passed and so on, to try to connect that. So what I did was I just did ask his permission if I could talk about my belief and you know how I manage. And he did listen, but I wasn't sure how to help this young teenager get past that or how I could help him more.
That is a more lengthy discussion. I think that the fear of death can be more of a challenge for a child than death itself. So I think that what I've noticed with relating to kids that have these feelings, because I work with a lot of boys that are suicidal, is I talk to them about the possibility of death and what will happen to them in another life if they die now. So I just get right into what's that like? Have you pictured how you're going to die? And you help normalize it for them. and then they get more comfortable with the whole idea. But in terms of his soul might be remembering that he's going to die soon, and you can't confirm that. You cannot say that. So you can just explain that in your life, just what you did in your life, knowing there's a higher purpose, not just a higher power, but a higher purpose to everything, and to have faith that he will be guided in the way he needs it, and also teaching him to pray to something, whether it be, some people just want to ask the universe for help. Some people want to ask an angel. If he can just ask for someone's guidance, it doesn't need to be God. That would be of help. But obviously there's a lot more to that. But you did a great job.
Past life regression on his behalf because he was afraid to do that.
Okay. Yeah, good. Yeah, you went above and beyond the call. That's my Lisa. Good. Yes.
So when you experience a gut feeling, is that the spirit guides?
Yeah. Yeah. That's your spirit guide saying, remember to lock the door, remember to turn off the stove. Yeah, they're with us all the time. Yep. I remember one time being in Nature's Emporium and the message I got was, you need almond milk. And I'm like, no, I have almond milk in my fridge. So I was just like, that's silly. So I go home, check the almond milk in the fridge. It was there, but it had expired. And I did need almond milk. So at that point I was like, okay, from now on, however minor it is, I'm listening. Yeah. All right, so now, yes, there's a question behind Dan. I was just at a funeral last week, and my good friend of many years told me that she was with her father-in-law when he died, but leading up to that for 2 days, he was seeing his wife who had died many years before. He told her what a good mother she was to their children. He was having all these conversations right before my friend's eyes. So I said, remember you didn't believe me when I first started telling you about this years ago? Now you've got your own proof. He saw his wife, he saw your husband's mother, Yeah, it's a beautiful experience, and we should be happy when a soul is released from this body and up to where things are easy again, right? All right, so I've only got a few minutes left, but I have to teach you how to pray effectively. So let me just quickly show you how to do that. What the easiest way to manifest what we want in this lifetime is to pray. It's the easiest way. And remember, you can pray to whoever you want. So here are the steps to effective prayer. Number 1, your desires must be pure and must be for our highest good. So those of you that are praying and you're not getting the result, are you asking for more money? That's not necessarily pure, right? But if you're saying, can I help more people and thus make more money, that's pure, right? We must be specific about what we want. We can't just say, please give me all the love in the world. Yes, that will come to you, but it's better to say, I would like to have a closer relationship with my sister, or I'd like to have a closer relationship with my girlfriend. So be specific in your prayer. Number 3, we must pray with absolute authority. So you say, please ensure. So one time I said, please ensure that the speeding tickets stop. And literally I did not get another speeding ticket again after that. And I remember thinking, when someone was telling me the story of them getting a speeding ticket at a networking meeting I was at, I remember thinking, oh yeah, I prayed for that and I got that. And you just have this knowing that that's taken care of. When the universe hears us asking for things weakly and not believing in what we're asking for, why are they going to rush to help us? They're going to help us when we are sure of what we want. We have unlimited authority to claim the happiness, health, and prosperity we want. So it's important that you know that asking for your health or your happiness is what the universe wants for you. I didn't pray for years because I didn't feel I deserved the answers to my prayers. All I would do was just be grateful for what I had. But interestingly enough, That is the highest form of prayer, is just being grateful for what you have. The next thing is to visualize your prayers being answered. So how is it going to feel when you have that answer to your prayer? The more closely you can feel that, the more likely this will happen for you. And then the last piece is that we have to detach from how our prayers are going to be answered. Remember in Princess and the Frog, and the more recent version, she wants to have her own restaurant. She's saving up all of her money, but she ends up not getting the restaurant by her purchasing it. And she's so upset because she can't have this restaurant she's dreamed about for years. But she meets the frog that turns into a prince, and that's how she gets her restaurant. So we cannot be attached to how our dreams are fulfilled, only what it is we want and how it's going to feel when we achieve it. There are 3 optional steps as well. Everything I've told you is mandatory for effective prayer, but the 3 optional things are that you say the prayer out loud or write it down, and you can also meditate on the prayer. So spend a lot more time focusing on it. Do you have to repeat your prayers when you've done it this way? No. If you say with authority what you want, and you know it, and it is for the highest good, you will get what you want. You only need to say it once authoritatively. Now here's the thing that hardly anybody talks about in this day and age when they're discussing manifesting your dreams. They don't talk about divine timing. You cannot know when your dreams are going to come true. Only God knows that, or the universe, or the higher power, however it's universal intelligence, knows when your dreams will come to fruition. So people will say, well, I was told you just, in the secret, you just visualize getting this red bike and it's there. No, there's divine timing. And we hardly ever are told about that. So we have to be patient. We have to have faith, and we have to know that this is right for us. So when I first started praying, the very first time I prayed was when my eldest was sick, and I desperately needed help in healing her. And I was sent to a book at Chapters on allergies in kids. This was the year 2000. And there were not all these books on allergies for kids. There was one, and there was one copy of it. And then it shortly went out of print afterwards, but that book gave me the answer to what I was looking for. That was the very first time I prayed. The second time I prayed, I was in the park with her, and she wanted to keep going on the slides and the swings and everything, and because she'd been constipated and in pain for so long, she had not spent a lot of time playing in parks. So she was finally feeling good, and I wanted to stay with her and keep her company, but my hands were cold. So I just prayed that God would warm up my hands so that I could stay with her in the park. How minor is that? But I thought, I'll try it. I looked over, and on a bench in the park were some of those expandable gloves that can fit anybody. The polyester ones. I just went over, picked them up, put them on. I was like, wow. And some would say, yeah, but those were already there before you prayed. I don't care. I didn't see them until I prayed, right? And then I was able to stay with her. So practice these methods. When I prayed about having this seminar series, I said, please fill the room. Please fill the room with people, because I want to help as many people as I can. And if you look, this room has been full every single time. But when you pray enough times over the years, God will answer you right away. I started heaving, sobbing, crying when I got the answer right after I prayed. I said, please fill this room up with people so I can help the most amount of people. And I started heaving, sobbing, crying, because the answer was, I will do this for you. This will happen for you. And I was like, wow, that's the first time that's happened. And a friend of mine, her husband is out of work. And I prayed that he find a job before he has to sell his house. And I got chills all going down my body that this would happen. And this week, he's very close to firming up his jobs. So we will get confirmation of that our prayers are being answered The more years you do it, I mean, that's a lot of years that I've been praying and I'm finally getting those responses in my body. In conclusion, when we incorporate spirituality into our lives, the different things that I've talked to you about in these 4 seminars, you'll find that you feel more fulfilled, you feel more loving, you feel more as though you're matching your higher selves, and you experience the most joy possible. I can't stress enough the importance of implementing these things that you've learned in these seminars. The joy that you feel going through every aspect of your life, even just going to a grocery store or going to the dentist, it's unbelievable how happy you can be wherever you go in your life. And those feelings just keep growing and growing till you feel it's almost like you're in love with someone and your love gets deeper and deeper as time goes on. It's like that. You just feel more and more joy as time progresses. And it's worth every bit of time you spend doing this work. Some people have said to me, why does so-and-so not have to do the work? Why am I always doing the work? And I say, because those that don't do the work can never be as happy as you are doing the work. So you can think they're getting off scot-free, but they're not. You have to do the work to feel this happy. It has been an honor to serve you over these number of months. Thank you very much for having me.
And on behalf of Meredith's audience, I know all of us are extremely grateful for her generosity in presenting these food workshops and for her knowledge, for her courage in telling us the information that we needed to know. And one day we're going to see her on a big stage.
Thank you, Mom. Oh my gosh, you're the best. It was a pleasure.